Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this community showdown between the Dwarves, who shall be led by Brindle. And today, my friends, he faces off against the Tomb Kings, who shall be led by Falcon. Now, as far as the build goes for the Dawi, let's go ahead and take a look here at the front line. So it looks like in total, it's going to be Dwarf Warriors basically into the sunset, which I think is a pretty good choice. Warriors of Dragonfire Pass on the far side as well, and you don't really need Longbeards here. I mean, they're pretty good. Longbeards, of course, can trade much more efficiently against like Tomb Guard and the higher tier infantry, but oftentimes Tomb Kings players just use like constructs and chariots, and you're going to be fighting like skeleton warriors and things like that. So I think the Dwarf Warriors here are a pretty good choice. They got 40 melee defense, they're ready to party, they got their axes, all is good in the realm. On top of that, there are going to be a couple miners with blasting charges, so in total there's going to be 3 of these bad boys. And these guys, like I said, very good at clearing out the Tomb King's chaff. They have blasting charges, they can wreck skeletons, they can wreck Tomb Guard, and honestly, they bring a little bit of extra AP to the battlefield. Yeah, they're not going to do much against the big dinos, or not dinos, the big constructs, but they can get their pickaxes and kind of chop at the legs a little bit better than other chaff Dwarven infantry like Dwarf Warriors. For the Lord here, it is going to be a Rune Lord, which is also a good choice because basically the other Dwarf Lords, if you're playing someone who's very skilled, of course, like Falcon, you're going to have trouble getting like Brindle or Ungrum or any of these other characters to catch the big constructs unless it's like very late in the game. So having the Rune Lord who's durable and also does have a really good slow, the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin to synergize with Trollhammer Torpedoes, slow down the value targets, I think is super clutch. Plus he has pretty good mass as well. So if he wants to, he can kind of work as like a Walmart Thorgrim and can kind of roadblock some of the big monsters and constructs and things like that. There is an organ gun in the back. We have a couple Slayers, so it looks like in total there are going to be 3 Slayers and 3 groups of the Iron Drakes with the Trollhammer Torpedoes, which is a very good choice for sure. Those things can wreck the constructs. You can use Thunders, you can use the Trollhammers. Trollhammers are a little bit more explosive, shorter range of course, and a little bit slower to kind of reload and shoot, but if you're able to get those guys on their target, man, they will butter some bread for sure. Now for Falcon's army, very good stuff. 4 groups of the Carrion, and basically, or is it 4? Yeah, it's 4. So obviously a lot of Dwarf players like to use the Gyrocopters with Brimstone guns to deal with constructs, so immediately they're pretty much out of the picture. If you have 4 of the Carrion here, those Gyros are not going to do anything, and it's a very, very good pick. And on top of that, there aren't any gyros like the case of this Dwarven army. You could basically get these bad boys and just land them on top of the missile pieces like the Iron Drakes and you'll prosper. Now for the front line here, it's going to be Tomb Guard and Skeleton Warriors across the entire front line. 2 of the big Tomb King kitties. Looks like it's going to be a Khemrian War Sphinx here, and also there's another Khemrian War Sphinx here. Yeah, it's just double. And it's going to be Cetra the Imperishable and the Chariot of the Gods. Falcon always bringing the cool characters, whether it be a Dread Saurian or the Great Cetra, but Cetra is pretty good here. He's a chariot, and chariots are always quite painful for the Dawi. He does do magic damage, but nonetheless, this boy can do some serious work against those dwarfs. It looks like another group of chariots here, skeleton chariots here, and that is pretty much it. So let's get this show on the road, guys, and have some fun. So it looks like the Organ Gun, taking a couple initial shots up here at the Carrion, was able to pick off 1 model. Really good value here. Organ Guns kind of have a weird problem where they shoot at like the corner of units and it doesn't really hit the center mass. I wish that would be something they would, I don't know, I wish they would fix that. But Skeleton Chariots here are advancing. Looks like the Organ Gun is actually going after some Tomb Guard, which isn't a bad idea. They are a relatively expensive unit. But on the far side here, you can see Falcon is coming in for a big old flank overload. So Cetra's here, the War Sphinxes are here. He's probably honestly going to use the Carrion, maybe to even just tie down the Organ Gun and maybe even tie down some Slayers while his Sphinxes do some work. Here the Trollhammer Torpedoes are able to unleash a salvo of fire here on the Skeleton Chariots. Not doing too much damage. Looks like Falcon was able to get back. Granted, at the end, a couple do connect, doing some okay damage. But for the most part, a big commitment here. Slayers are being swarmed by Carrion. And Carrion, I believe, are infantry size, so the Slayers aren't going to get a bonus for Large here, and honestly, it's going to tie them down for quite some time. In the meantime, though, very dangerous situation from Cetra here. He does use a Wrath Patra onto the blobbed up Dragonback Slayers, but he's slowed right now. Rune of Wrath and Ruin is going down, and he is taking a royal hammering from the Trollhammer Torpedoes. Outstanding damage coming in, putting him down to half health, and he's very expensive on his chariot. He's almost 3,000 gold, if I'm not mistaken. And here you can see the Slayers, of course, are still caught up in combat here, dealing with the Carrion. And it looks like Falcon's Khemrian War Sphinx has come over here on top of the Organ Gun, but it's also getting hit by a bunch of crossfire. The Iron Drake's doing so much damage this game. But now comes the real pressure from the Tomb Kings. They're going to be getting in there with their chariots, and the Dwarfs can only be so many places at once. Nonetheless, Dragonback Slayers were able to take Cetra down to about 45-50%, give or take. And the other War Sphinx is doing a ton of damage against the frontline troops here, these miners and other chaff units here and there. Slayers are able to fend off the Carrion. Carrion are now pulling back, which is definitely a smart play. Basically, you want to get the Carrion at this point, just try and target the Iron Drakes while you trash the rest of the army here with your mobile forces. Khemrian War Sphinx able to get some okay damage on impact, taking out what looks to be 2 of those Iron Drakes with Trollhammer Torpedoes. But the Rune Lord's on the hunt. He's coming after him, and the Dragonback Slayers are doing a good job chasing off the Skeleton Chariots. More blasting charges coming in, so clearly the Tomb Kings will be probably losing the frontline engagement in many respects, especially where there are Skeleton Warriors. So if we look up, more blasting charges are going down, but for the most part, the Trollhammer torpedoes are offline, and unfortunately for the dwarves, they're a little bit bunched up here. You can see these Iron Drakes with the Trollhammer torpedoes are being swarmed on by Carrion, but what's good is he's doing a good job keeping the Slayers on top of those targets. So Slayers here are fighting up against the Carrion, and should be able to chop them down, and also put a little bit of pressure on the Cambrian War Sphinx. He can also put the Trollhammer torpedoes in guard mode, which will basically make sure that they fire while they're, even if they're in combat, they'll get a couple shots off. Here, the organ gun's back online, actually, and it looks like it's relatively healthy as well, being guarded by Dragonback Slayers, so that is a little bit precarious here for the Tomb Kings. This one Sphinx was pushed back by the focus fire here from the Iron Drakes. However, Falcon, of course, immediately smelling blood, going to be bringing in the Skeleton Chariots, running over the Iron Drakes with the Trollhammer torpedoes, and definitely doing some pretty good damage. Potentially finishing them off, maybe not, hard to say. There are some skeletons coming in as well, and it looks like the Djaf's incantation of Curse Blades is going to be dropped to give them some additional combat prowess. On the far side of the battlefield, the Carrion have been fended off once again here by the Slayers, and Cetra's really beat up though. Man, the Organ Gun ripping shots into Cetra, putting him down. He is very danger low, 767, and the Trollhammer torpedoes have lined up their sights. Here they come, shooting into the Imperishable one. Are they going to get him? And Cetra, the Imperishable, does fall to the wrath of the Trollhammer torpedoes. So man, really good persistence, keeping those guys firing despite the fact that they've been tied down for most of the game. But every time they're open, they've been able to rip and get some pretty good value. So this Cambrian War Sphinx is actually in relatively bad binding here, probably because of the Slayers and the Trollhammer torpedoes. And the chariots for the Tomb Kings, what do they have left? So there's 9 skeleton chariots right here. It looks like there are 5 right here. As far as the balance of power goes, it's pretty even, maybe slightly Dowie favored, but still, winnable for both players. Cambrian War Sphinx is here, and on the far side, I believe we have a somewhat healthy Cambrian War Sphinx as well. And it looks like here the Dwarven position in a little bit of trouble. Trollhammer torpedoes being swarmed by chariots and a Sphinx. And if he can finish these guys off, or at least break them and then chase them off with skeleton warriors, that'd be very cost effective. And here comes the skeleton summon from Falcon. So he's able to drop the skeleton summon, or excuse me, the Ushopti summon, here in the back, right on top of the organ gun. It looks like the organ gun is just pretty much shut down. And of course, being chased off here by the Carrion, so that's not going to be going anywhere. But nonetheless, this Ushopti summon is doing a pretty good job, taking some of the dwarves down with him as the chariots do come in as well. Going to be running through these very lightly armored dwarves. And Tomb King's chariots don't have the best AP values, but against Slayers, they can certainly do some good damage if they don't get caught and kind of stuck here. But yeah, Slayers down to a very low model count. We have 14 Slayers here. We have 6 right here. This Trollhammer torpedo is getting a little bit compromised here. Some Tomb Guard and the Cambrian War Sphinx are able to push through. Yeah, and it's a very, very close game, to be honest. Here we do, of course, have the Rune Lord. A fair amount of dwarf warriors are still in okay shape. And the Rune Lord is, one cool thing about him, just like Thorgrim, is he's a high mass character. So he's not going to be kind of rode down by chariots and things like that. He is going to be able to retaliate against the chariots, which have 80 armor themselves. So dwarf warriors here are embraced, being rode down by the chariots once more. As far as this fight goes, we still have a fair amount of Slayers, I guess. There's 27 here and 8 here. And those are Dragonback Slayers. They're no mere Slayers. And it looks like the Trollhammer torpedoes were able to rip a huge volley right into the face of that Cambrian War Sphinx. And now it looks like the Rune Lord's coming in. And also, guys, the Ushopti summon will be disappearing here in just a moment, which is certainly going to be helpful for the dwarves. But yeah, still 2 big Sphinxes, quite scary. Now, if the dwarves are able to kill like all the skeletons and the other assets in the Tomb King's army, this was played in one of my tournaments, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, the Cambrian War Sphinxes would have to stay in combat, which I think the 2 of them probably could bully down the Rune Lord. He's pretty good in combat. I mean, 40, 47, 350, but his AP values aren't the best. Oh no, that's not good for the Tomb Kings. The Iron Drake's coming in, the tenacity of the dwarves really shining through here. And here comes a barrage of Trollhammer torpedoes just slamming into the back of that Cambrian War Sphinx, doing about 200 damage, but nice juke there. Falcon was able to dodge a couple shots. But the other War Sphinx is getting a little bit low as well. Oh man, and another Trollhammer torpedo coming out of nowhere with a steel chair. Going to be shooting into the face of the War Sphinx, but it looks like the Sphinx should be able to take these guys down, as it does get a nice charge into their bodies here. And here you can see the Rune Lord in Mortal Kombat, his mass really proving to be quite helpful as his Cambrian War Sphinx is getting danger low. And on top of that, we do have the Iron Drakes, 10 of them here, 10 of 21, basically 50% firing capacity. They are able to bring down the Cambrian War Sphinx, and for the first time of the game, I suppose, the balance of power is slightly in the favor here of the Dowie. Rune Lord here, standing shoulder to shoulder with these Iron Drakes, challenging the mighty Cambrian War Sphinx to come in. A Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin dropped on the Skeleton Chariot, which means they're probably going to be taking a pretty nasty salvo here from the Trollhammer torpedoes as they do approach. So here they come, 6 models here. Looks like some blasting charges coming in from a couple wild miners. And there comes another volley of the Trollhammer torpedoes. Now, as far as what they have left, there is a group right here of 6. There's some Tomb Guard here in the distance. Over here, it looks like the Dwarf Warriors are able to win this fight against the Skeleton Warriors to no one's surprise. And the Organ Gun is back online. So the Dwarven Organ Gun, man, these dwarves are tenacious. They're able to come back and reman this Organ Gun. But the Chariots might be able to just come in and shut them down. But, oh man, they shatter. I was just hyping you guys up, giving you this whole kind of a story and narrative. And then they just run for the hills. What a disappointment. Now, the battle's still still pretty tight here. We do, of course, have the Iron Drakes. Iron Drakes are going to be pretty big. I mean, any shots they can get into the War Sphinx is going to be huge because, again, that softens them up for the Rune Lord, which eventually will have to fight them. A little bit of damage coming in. Falcon, with some very nice control, is able to dodge some of those shots here. And here comes the Iron Drakes with the Trollhammer Torpedoes in combat. Certainly going to favor the Sphinx, and those guys probably are potentially going to be shattering. They've broken a couple times. Rune Lord getting into combat as well, and the counter charge from the Sphinx very, very good. But man, these guys are just not going. Come on. I'm hyping you up. Don't run away. For leadership, 118 HP. A couple shots coming from both directions, and I don't think the Sphinx is going to be able to come back. Look at this. All three of them are still shooting at this point. The Sphinx is able to shatter one group of those guys, but they deserve it. Those guys are heroes. That crew on the organ gun, I don't know. A little bit on the fence about those guys. Nonetheless, so if we look at what the Tomb Kings have left, we have Skeleton Chariots. This big Sphinx is crumbling. 686, 675. So basically, if the Dwarves can just endure, I think that the War Sphinx probably will crumble. It's very beat up, and of course, the current balance of power is very, very heavily favored in the Dwarves, which is pretty surprising. I mean, there's almost nothing left. Here comes some more Trollhammer Torpedoes shooting into the Skeleton Chariots, and down goes the Sphinx, and that is going to be a Dawi victory. Man, what a well-played game by both players. It is, in my opinion, a hard matchup for the Tomb Kings, especially if you're playing against a very good Dwarf player like Grombrindle. I think it's slightly Dwarf favored, but nonetheless, it was a very well-played game on both sides. I mean, those Trollhammer Torpedoes were tenacious. They stuck to the bitter end, and Grombrindle did a really good job keeping the Slayers on top of those targets and really chewing down the harassing units over the course of the battle. And yeah, Falcon's army was great. Such for the Imperishable, always fun to see. War Sphinxes and War Cats, always a good time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that Dwarf versus Tomb King game. Man, that was an absolute cockfight. And certainly got more matches from the tournament between these two coming up. So on that note, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and we will see you guys on the other side. Take care.